They sent 4 fake cops to our door over flower colors. I wish I was joking. I was literally standing on my own porch watching grown men in dollar store uniforms try to lecture my wife on HOA violations while she calmly told them, "We're not even in your HOA." And you'd think that would be the end, right? Nope. That was just the first spark. Suddenly, it felt like someone had flipped a switch and decided we were the enemy. The threats, the forged papers, the weird cars circling our block. Something was seriously off. I just finished fixing Mrs. Peterson's water heater when I pulled into my driveway that Tuesday evening. The wrench was still in my hand when I saw them standing on my porch like they owned the place. 4 guys in what looked like police uniforms, but something felt wrong from the first second. Their shoes didn't match for one thing. 2 wore sneakers, 1 had work boots, and the 4th guy was actually wearing flip-flops with his official uniform. I mean, come on. Real officers don't show up to official business wearing beach footwear. "We need to speak with Sophia Hayes about HOA compliance violations," the tallest one announced as I walked up my own front steps. The badge on his chest was all shiny and new, without a single scratch, looking less like a symbol of authority and more like a trophy from a county fair. I stopped dead in my tracks and stared at him. That's when I noticed their radios looked like toys. A real police radio is a bulky professional piece of equipment that crackles with constant communication from dispatch. These things were small plastic and completely silent. One of them kept pressing the button like he was trying to make it work, but no sound came out, not even static. The leader pulled out a folder of papers that looked fresh from a printer. No coffee stains, no worn edges, nothing that suggested these documents had seen any kind of official process. They were so pristine they practically glowed white under the porch light. According to their script, Sophia had signed an HOA agreement during a recent boundary expansion. Before the fake officers could fumble through another scripted response, Sophia appeared at the front door. She took one look at their documents, reviewed whatever garbage they'd printed out, and then looked up at them with that same calm expression she gets when she knows something nobody else does. "We're not even in your HOA," she said in the same tone she'd used to tell someone the sky is blue. I held up my phone and started recording, making sure to get clear shots of their flimsy badges and mismatched uniforms. Since they couldn't produce legitimate paperwork with my wife's actual signature, I announced I was calling 911. The transformation was instant and almost comical. 4 grown men who'd been trying to intimidate us suddenly looked like teenagers caught sneaking out past curfew. The morning after the fake cop incident, Miranda Cross's campaign of escalation began. For a decade, she'd been the HOA president, a woman whose clipboard was a permanent extension of her arm. I'd always thought her obsession with rules was just hypervigilance. But now, I could see the malice behind it. The first move of her campaign arrived with a thick envelope marked "Notice of Property Incorporation." The letterhead was impressive and official, a costly forgery designed to intimidate. It claimed a recent surveyor error had been corrected, and our property was now within HOA jurisdiction. Miranda clearly understood that most people don't question the authority of an official-looking document. 10 days later, another envelope appeared like clockwork. "Violation Notice" was stamped across the top in red letters. According to this document, Sophia's rose garden wasn't architecturally approved and violated community standards that apparently required approval for flower colors. I actually laughed out loud reading that one. That night, someone left a single black rose on our mailbox. There was no note, no one around, just a dark flower taped to the lid. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. It was a direct chilling message that someone was watching our house and knew exactly which flowers had started this whole conflict. I bumped into my neighbor Brandon at the grocery store the next day. "Miranda's trying to make an example out of you," he said quietly. He confirmed Miranda had created a private social media group to spread rumors about us, calling us non-compliant new residents. The sheer audacity of the lie infuriated me. The third notice came exactly 10 days after the second, maintaining Miranda's precise timeline. Final warning, with a $500 fine for unauthorized landscaping modifications. Her methodical approach was creating a paper trail that would make it look like she'd followed proper procedures, even though the entire foundation of her authority was fabricated. On the 30th day, Miranda showed up at our front door with a small crew of 3 others, all carrying cameras and documents. They announced they were there to document violations before proceeding with enforcement. I watched Miranda direct her crew to photograph Sophia's garden like she was gathering evidence for a criminal trial. Right then, Deputy Grant Parker pulled into our driveway. He'd responded to my call about the harassment campaign and wanted to follow up on the fake police incident from the previous month. Here was Miranda caught in the middle of what looked like an organized intimidation campaign, suddenly facing questions from a real police officer. Sophia suggested we take the documents to the county recorder's office to verify their authenticity. The county clerk was helpful, pulling out the original survey records and comparing them to Miranda's version. "This is such bad Photoshop work," the real surveyor commented while examining Miranda's maps under proper lighting. While I argued with the county clerk about technical details, Sophia quietly worked her way through the microfiche records. She found a yellowed piece of paper with handwritten notes in the margin. The original deed contained easement notes I'd never seen before. Sophia's grandmother had apparently granted an access easement for farm road maintenance back when the area was still AGR. The old farm road described in the easement had eventually become modern Willowbrook Drive, which meant every car entering Miranda's precious HOA community was actually crossing Hayes family property. The easement terms were specific about agricultural use only and stated clearly that commercial development requires owner consent and compensation. Cultural land. If Miranda was secretly negotiating with developers to sell community access rights, she was essentially trying to sell something she didn't own. The Hayes family had never given consent for commercial use of our easement, and we'd certainly never received any compensation for the increased traffic that came with residential development. Miranda's response to our county visit was swift and vicious. Within 48 hours, she'd launched a social media campaign designed to turn the entire neighborhood against us. She created a private group called Maintaining Community Standards, and invited every resident except us, posting warnings about non-compliant new residents. 3 days after her social media campaign launched, the fake cops returned with a more elaborate operation. This time they set up what looked like official surveillance outside our house, complete with a tripod and clipboards. Their setup was more convincing than their first visit, but I recognized the same mismatched shoes and toy radios. The timing of Deputy Parker's follow-up visit couldn't have been more perfect. When he pulled into our driveway and saw 3 men in police uniforms conducting unauthorized surveillance, his reaction was immediate and professional. Within minutes, 2 additional patrol cars arrived and our quiet street looked like a crime scene. The anonymous threat that arrived that evening escalated the situation beyond anything we'd experienced so far. Someone slipped a note under our door with shaky handwriting: "The development contracts are worth millions. Back down or face consequences." The threat was vague enough to avoid direct criminal charges but specific enough to let us know our easement discovery had disrupted something much bigger. Miranda's lawyer filed an emergency restraining order against us the following week, claiming we were interfering with legitimate HOA operations. The court filing painted us as troublemakers who refused to respect legitimate authority and were encouraging other residents to question HOA regulations. Sophia's response was characteristically strategic. Instead of hiring a lawyer to fight Miranda's restraining order directly, she decided to use our easement rights proactively. She filed a countermotion with the county for an easement safety inspection that was completely legal with proper permits and mandatory notification periods. Sophia hired a licensed contractor to conduct the safety assessment, which required temporary barriers across Willowbrook Drive. Signs were posted at both ends: private right-of-way, temporary safety inspection, county permit 2024-1847. The immediate impact on the HOA community was exactly what you'd expect when their main access road gets shut down. During the court proceedings, Brandon approached us with a USB flash drive containing internal HOA emails. The drive revealed email threads between Miranda and Grandview Development showing detailed financial arrangements for community access coordination. Miranda had received $50,000 from Grandview Development over 6 months. The community meeting that followed Brandon's evidence release was unlike anything our neighborhood had ever experienced. 30 families packed the community center, demanding answers about the developer payments. When residents demanded an immediate vote to remove Miranda from office, she announced she was resigning effective immediately. The judge's final ruling exceeded every expectation. After thorough review of all evidence, she awarded us $40,000 in easement usage compensation, $25,000 in legal fees and harassment damages, plus $15,000 in punitive damages for a total judgment of $80,000. Miranda was forced to sell her house to cover the judgment and faced criminal investigation for fraud and conspiracy. The barriers were finally removed after our easement inspection concluded with proper legal acknowledgement of our property rights established. Traffic began flowing normally through Willowbrook Drive with a small sign reading, "Private right-of-way, courtesy of the Hayes family." 2 months after the final court judgment, I was installing a new mailbox while Sophia worked in her rose garden that had started this entire battle. Brandon walked over with a beer, watching kids play in the street. "You know what's funny," he said. "Miranda spent so much energy trying to prove we all belonged to her expanded HOA that she forgot to check who actually owned the road she was standing on." 3 weeks later, I watched a moving van pull up to Miranda's house. She emerged carrying a single box while movers handled everything else. She looked directly at our house across the street, shook her head, and climbed into her car. The woman who had once wielded so much authority was now leaving with nothing but debt and disgrace. The right-of-way that Miranda had tried to control through fraud continued to serve the community exactly as it had for 60 years, but now with proper legal acknowledgement of our family's ownership. Sophia trimmed the roses last, not because of regulations, but because she wanted them to bloom again unbothered. Sometimes the best victory isn't revenge at all, but simply telling the truth and letting the law handle everything else while you sit back on your porch and watch the roses bloom in the same garden that started it all.